Be in December, sometime December. Um, uh, there's gonna come out pretty soon.
Can you
I don't
say
want
where
to
it's
say.
going to be?
I
You
can't
already
say.
told me.
I did tell you, but
I'm not telling anybody.
No, don't tell
Until the
nobody.
cameras are off.
Yeah, but it's gonna be this year. It's gonna be an exciting fight. Me and Anthony Joshua rematch. But the word's gonna come out soon. Where's gonna be at? If anything, I'll message you and be like, "Oh, you already know." Actually, you already know.
Well, so now going into this rematch, is there anything that you're going to do differently? I mean, you.
What's up, fight fans? This is Kurt DeVille with Counterpunch Boxing News, and I want to talk to you guys about Joe Rogan's podcast with guest Andy Ruiz, the new unified heavyweight champion of the world, the first Mexican heavyweight champion of the world. And I like Joe Rogan's podcast and I like the Counterpunches podcast simply because he takes time with each guest and ask them different questions, and they're allowed to elaborate on whatever they're doing, their pastime, um, their trials, their tribulations. So I want to talk to you guys about that podcast and things I extracted from it. You know, talking about Andy Ruiz for a minute. Things that I didn't know, things I knew and didn't know. But just to clarify it to you guys, the new unified heavyweight champion of the world was going through financial problems at the time. You know, he has 5 children, which I didn't know. Um, 5 children, that's a lot. I have a daughter, which I think she's a handful, but imagine plus 4 more. Um, he started boxing when he was 6 years old, and he trained for a year, had his first amateur fight, fought a 12-year-old, and got the brakes beat off of him, obviously, because, he was a lot younger. But since he was so overweight as a kid, he had to fight bigger guys, which now he's accustomed to fighting bigger guys. Okay, so he's earned that pound of flesh, so to speak, of fighting bigger guys at a very, very, very early age. Despite his age, since he was overweight, he had to do that with guys that were older as well as bigger. I remember Mike Tyson had that same problem. It's just they thought he was a lot older than he really was, but he was actually younger. At 12 years old, he was already 180 pounds, whereas Ruiz, he was bigger in just different proportions, right? So he had the same problem, and he learned how to fight early. He started karate first. He didn't like that. He started boxing. They beat the piss out of him. He respected that. But back to his financial problems. Andy Ruiz was facing financial hardship because he was with Bob Arum. First of all, top rank, wouldn't get him the fights that he wanted. So he said that he had to pay himself out of his contract, something similar to what Mayweather did, by getting out of that contract with Bob Arum. Sometimes the contract can be beneficial, then sometimes it can be, shackles, and in his case, they were shackles because he wasn't getting the fights. He wasn't fighting enough to make enough money. So he had to go somewhere to get the fights. Okay. And in order for him to do that, he had to get out of Bob Arum's life. I don't know how much he paid, but whatever he paid put him in a debt. Okay. Until he got money. Now, he had just fought before, as people know, but he learned about the fight 6 weeks before, and he said going in, he only had a week and a half off, as we know. So Andy Ruiz really came in fresher than he ever been because there was nothing that was a handicap. So in the fight going on and moving forward, he had just got out of a fight, and from that fight, he had a training camp. He had only a week and a half off. He went right back into training, and he knew that. So he did basically, a hybrid style. Hey, I will fight a fight, kind of like a novice type training. When you fight, you win. You take a week and a half off. You get right back in there because you have another fight planned. Okay, so that's what he had, and I think didn't have any disadvantages. Especially as far as time. A lot of people like to use that as a clutch, but I think because he had that week and a half off, he had just enough time for his body to heal. He needed money. He needed to take care of his family, his mom, everybody else, his kids, his intermediate family. So when that opportunity came, he stated that he reached out to Eddie Hearn, and Eddie Hearn obliged him for that opportunity. Okay, so especially after Jarrell Miller failed his drug test, as we know. Now, one thing I want to add is he wanted to make changes to his camp this particular time. He wants to apply some weights to it, and it's funny. Joe Rogan was like, hey, have you ever heard the saying, if it's not broke, don't fix it? You know what I mean? Because he's right. I mean, if he beat Anthony Joshua the way he beat Anthony Joshua decisively, why would you ever want to change anything? I think it's best for him to stay what he is. He's like the John Candy of boxing, okay? Chris Farley of boxing. His appearance is his trademark. I don't know how old you audience are, but think of Alfred Hitchcock, right? Small. You used to the belly with the outline, but imagine him small, and applying weights make you tense, weights make you tighter, just as Anthony Joshua. I do not think that's a right way to go, and that's something I wanted to counterpunch. I don't think that's where he needs to go. He also states he came in at 267 because of Joshua's size. Joshua came in at 247. His trainers would like him to be 255, 250. Now, speaking of his trainers, he had 4 trainers before getting to Manny Robles, right? And that was Freddie Roach, Jeff Camolcha, Abel Sanchez, then Manny Robles. And every trainer had a story. He liked Freddie Roach, but then they Top Rank sent him to Las Vegas. So he worked out with Jeff. And then from Jeff, he wandered on Abel Sanchez. Abel Sanchez didn't have enough time because, he had other fighters, that he was fighting, like Triple G, that he was training. You know what I mean? And then he ran up on Manny Robles. And Manny has took him to this point in his career. Let's see. He's watched that fight about 30 times. So he's definitely, in awe of that fight. He knows that's the highlight of his life right now. He mentioned being humble. It's going to be on the Zone again. And after he beats Anthony Joshua, if he can get past him, he says he would love to fight Deontay Wilder or Tyson Fury. He mentions danger of success that could possibly go to his head, or like Tyson Fury is a prime example that, hey, be careful of what you do, because he does have a lot more entourage now. A lot more cousins are coming around. He stated that. He's still going back and forth with Eddie Hearn about where it's going to be, but he already knows where it's going to be. So I don't think that's an issue anymore, because that's what I let you guys listen to at the beginning of the video. But other than that, it was a good podcast. It's funny. Everyone called him Destroyer, but they called him Destroyer simply because he broke shit as a kid. He couldn't keep toys or dishes or anything. He broke everything. He destroyed everything around him. So he was more or less a destructive kid versus like a destructive badass name for the ring. You know what I mean? And I thought that was amusing about Andy Ruiz, him having 5 kids, him destroying things, getting his nickname, him fighting at the age of 7 years old, fighting 12-year-olds, And one thing I want to add is that Anthony Joshua, we know he has problem with shorter guys like Ruiz, but Andy Ruiz said he had the similar problem. He said he fought a guy that was smaller and it's difficult. So he can definitely empathize with with Anthony Joshua, because no one really likes to fight someone smaller. It is awkward. You know, you have to punch downward, an angle downward versus, you know, vertical or up higher. You know what I mean? So I thought that was very interesting, but it was a very good video, very informative. It just showed you the story about Andy Ruiz. You know, he mentioned not eating a lot of meat because, you know, he couldn't take a shit. He was constipated. You know, it was kind of, it was hilarious, you know, a lot of things, you know, but it is who he is. He is who he is. I didn't see him talk a lot of shit in this video. It was just really informative, and really he spoke about himself, and I think it's very interesting, you know, talking about Andy Ruiz. But here in a couple days or so, we will see where the fight's going to be. But this was a very interesting video that showed a lot about the new unified Mexican heavyweight champion of the world, Andy Ruiz. And I'll leave the link below, let you guys check it out if you care to. But anyway, you guys tell me what you think about this video. Of course, please subscribe. And you guys been Counterpunched. Peace.